I learned the hard way over my career. We can maybe talk a little bit about that. That not every niche is created equal, and so you do have to reaching the right niche is key. So
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast. My name is Brett Gilliland. I'm the host of today's episode. At every episode, we bring real business owners who share some of their real lessons learned through the real growth stories that they have, and also some of the real challenges that they continue to face as they're looking to grow their businesses. Today, our guest is John Reed. Welcome to the show, John. Glad to have you here. Thank you for being here.
yeah, I've been looking forward to this. I think we booked this some weeks ago, and then we nailed it down. So I'm psyched to be here.
Sometimes it takes a bit to make it happen, but then we just have
Indeed.
it's all the anticipation for the magic that's about to occur. I wanna give a quick intro to Diginomica. That's the business that John is a co-founder of. Diginomica, he and his team are publishing content, but that's kind of the what. But the behind that, they're doing some cool things to move the conversation to create change, specifically in the enterprise software space. But they're producing content, they're engaging thought leaders in the right conversations to improve projects at that enterprise software level and make real change happen. So now that I've given my best attempt, John, at sharing what you guys are doing at Diginomica. Why don't you expand on that a little bit? Maybe clarify what I was sharing.
Yeah, it's a good summary. We've been around for about 11 years, and at the time, uh, the co-founders and we've had a little slight turnover, but generally the same group stuck together, and we wanted to make some change. We wanted to sort of quote unquote disrupt the media landscape a little bit. We felt we could reach an audience that was not a huge audience, but an influential audience, and we felt that audience was really being overlooked because at the time a lot of tech sites were all about like, and we still see this to this day, where it's all about like these viral advertising models and volume page views. Let's write about tech gadgets or whatever goes viral, and you go onto these sites and there's pop-up ads and pop-up videos everywhere. It's a mess. And we're like, let's make a really clean, accessible reader experience, and let's target this audience of people that are trying to make change in the enterprise software industry, and specifically about making projects better, delivering more value. Like, what does that look like, and what does transformation look like? Which often, surprisingly enough, is more about people and process than it is about tech. So there's a lot of debunking of tech overhype on our sites, but then some intellectual curiosity around what's possible. So these days we spend a lot of time on the pros and cons of AI and trying to demystify that, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff besides AI. But it comes down to looking at change and why it matters. And we were really pleased to see how how we could prove that out, that in this case reaching this audience made a big difference. And I continue to believe that reaching the right niche audiences is a really powerful way to build businesses, but there are new obstacles to that as well. And I learned the hard way over my career. We can maybe talk a little bit about that. That not every niche is created equal, and so you do have to reaching the right niche is key. So
Yeah, very good. As I was listening to you, I was like, maybe offline we could compare some notes because it is fascinating to me that you're working on transformation efforts or helping improve those efforts in the enterprise software space. And you said it's not so much about the technology as it is about the people and processes. The work that we do to help seven-figure businesses scale, it's not always so much about the core client engine, right? It's not the getting and serving of clients, which is essential, but it's the people and processes that you build up that enable you to scale this engine that you've built. So be fun to compare some
yeah.
notes after the fact. But all right, let's jump into some of the lessons that you've learned as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a co-founder. You guys have scaled the current business, um, but you also have previous career experience. So I'd just love for you to share any lessons learned that you've had over your experience that might help other business owners that are trying to figure out, how do I take this thing that's working, but then increase the impact, right? Grow what is possible in the people we can serve.
Right. So, I graduated from college in the early 90s, and I had a lot of artistic ambitions, I got involved in some startups in the publishing arena, including this was desktop publishing revolution. So we launched a successful weekly arts entertainment magazine locally and stuff. I learned a ton about writing, but I also learned a whole bunch around finance, and I became really fascinated by that because I realized that without my knowledge of business and finance, I could end up as a freelance writer and basically like at the kind of being my future would be dictated by all these editors. I would have no control. And so I really wanted to understand sort of the business side of things. And then in 1995, I read one of the most influential books in my business career. And I honestly don't know how relevant it is today, but I think a lot of it probably is. But it was called The E Myth Revisited, but it was basically the core lesson in that book, and I just have it called up on my screen today because I was looking at the reviews. And 95 was, I think, the year it came out. That was around the time when I was really thinking hard because I was like, I'm going to wear myself out writing my ass off. And what is that going to add up to? And I want to read you just briefly this short review of this book. It said, this book does a great job of forcing the business owner to think about working on the business versus working in the business. The idea of building your business like a franchise you can duplicate over and over again makes a lot of sense. And it goes on from there. I don't read the whole thing, but
Yeah.
basically that
Michael
that
Gerber.
really
Michael
that really
Gerber. Yeah.
yep, Michael shout out. That really shook up a lot of my thinking at that time. And as a result I got involved in real estate investing, and I was definitely convinced that I wanted to build my own assets. And so I thought, well, real estate eventually I could really scale that. And so I got involved and I had some success. But I really ran into a tough problem, which is, I think, something that is worth thinking about, which is even though it looked like that was going to scale for me, as per the lessons in that book, there was a problem, which was I didn't really have the passion for it.
Mm,
And to an extent, I really didn't have the talent for it. I was pretty good at it, but the publishing stuff really spoke to me and it really hit me deep, like, and I was driven by the concept of putting work out there in the world, creative work, like, and I couldn't get away from it. And so for me, I was torn a little bit from this template that I thought was really right versus what I was drawn to. And so then I came to the conclusion that, well, I could scale with content also because content scales. Like, you write one thing once, but if you reach enough people, you go to bed at night, your book is still selling on the bookstore shops and stuff. And so I started self-publishing and then eventually picked up more publishing clients in the enterprise software and ERP arena. So to some extent, I was correct about that, but I will say that I think more and more that has shifted where I think if you really want scale, I think you have to be really careful about the publishing business just because we could talk more about the modern content environment, but generally speaking, you kind of have to keep feeding the beast. Like, so even though it does scale, like it's not nearly as evergreen as it used to be. The only artistic medium that has any evergreen qualities right now is arguably music. And you still see that where people will YouTube reaction videos, they're reacting to stuff that's 20 years old and it still resonates. But in general, like with other kinds of publishing, it doesn't, and you have to keep feeding and feeding. And so that's been a little bit of my core challenge is like, yes, it has scaled and it's done a lot of those good things, but it requires more effort because you can't step away quite the same way. I mean, you can if you're publishing a bunch of authors, but in general, I was drawn to sharing my unique points of view, and that meant me. So, so anyway, I've always struggled with that the rest of my career, and I can't say I ever totally resolved it, but I will say that the lessons I learned from that were invaluable.
well, I appreciate you sharing. I would say, well, I want to ask if you were to think about the scaling that you did do, because I hear the point that you're making. Like, you have to keep feeding that beast if you're publishing content. So it's not like build it once and then I can keep using it. Like software as a service, right? We all love that model. If you can be the brand that takes off in the space and gets all the
Yep.
adoption, like you built it once and now it can be used over and over again. And there's maintenance that has to go into it and upgrades and all the rest. So it's not build it once and it's infinite use ever, but it feels a little bit more scalable than the content publishing machine that you just have to keep feeding. So I get the point, but you still learn some things about scaling from scaling a team and how you go from processes that worked when there were three of us and this much content versus processes that have to be developed when there's 15 of us and that much content, right? Like I I don't
Yep.
know what the scaling looked like, but I know there are lessons learned. So let's dive in on a couple
Yep.
of those lessons. Try
Sure.
to try to share something that other business owners can go, I could take that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so I think one of the really cool things is that you don't have to be in publishing to care about content, and that's one of the lessons that I think is really transferable here is that content's kind of magical because when you put out content in your industry and you make it freely available in various forms, and that could be all kinds of forms, multimedia, text still works really well for search engines and stuff like that. When you put that out, there's something really wonderful that happens around reader trust and authority,
Mm,
and that really can expand the reach of what you do. And I've seen that happen for just countless businesses in so many different industries where they're punching above their weight because they decided to figure out how to become publishers and media producers. And what I always like say in my own work is sort of media over marketing. It's getting harder and harder to reach people with sort of paid for marketing messages, and it's getting easier and easier to reach people in more authentic media ways than it ever has been if you have a knack for that. Now it does take some practice, and to some extent maybe you have to hire some people to help you with that. There's some sort of bittersweet news around that, in that there's a lot of people that are good at media that have been have lost their jobs or have been downsized in various ways, because the pure media industry has struggled a lot, but combining media with other businesses has strengthened those businesses in a lot of different ways. And because now you have something to monetize, like besides the content, and
mm,
that makes the monetization journey, I think, very effective. And so you start to think about, you can start rethinking your buyer's journey a lot and think about, so in other words, like if I meet you at like a party and 1 minute into the conversation, I hand you my business card and start pressing you for an appointment. You're kinda like, "Ah, I kinda wanna take a shower," like, that doesn't feel right. But with the content piece, it sort of changes that because now I have ideas that you're interested in, and now I have concepts that might help you solve some of your problems, and it allows you to kinda get to know me and my thinking and what I do, and even my personality. If you see me on a video or something, you start to imagine like, yeah, I could relate to this person. I could work with this person. And like, so you start to define that in terms of your sales process, and you start to figure out, oh yeah, and then we're going to have some free content, then we're going to have some stuff that maybe people sign up for. So there's some opt-in components to that where they're, so now we have like audiences, we have opt-in subscribers, and then we have customers. And again, what you hear from people that do this is that those opt-in subscribers, like, that's a great way to start getting customers, like, and not all of them will ever become customers, but some of them will be your advocates even if they aren't customers. And so that's the beauty of content, is that you don't have to be a publisher to care about it. It really helps your business to grow in a variety of industries.
Yeah, I like the distinction or how you called out the difference between marketing and media because, or content. Let's use media and content synonymously here for a second. Ignorantly, I'll do that. You can correct me if that's wrong. But what I hear you saying is, if you provide valuable content, something that actually delivers content to the consumer of that media, that's different than the old way of marketing was just pound the message, maybe tap into some pain or some emotion, and we got your solution. But media or content allows us to actually start delivering value, build the trust, add to the credibility of the brand, so that now when I see other things from you, I'm already like there's already an initial, I don't know, relationship forming because of that
Yep.
consumption of the media. So totally powerful. Thank you for that. Any other thoughts on your mind about maybe on the, you said the ERP level software, or the enterprise level software that you guys publish about. There's all these huge projects that can be hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to try to make happen, and it's really about a change, and that people and process are behind that change, or are the keys to making that work. on some level, have you found the people and process work in your own team development, your own business development being keys to your success as well?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the so our business has its challenges, and I can share some of the challenges as well. But one of the things that worked well for us was that by the time we started this business, we'd all had a bunch of hard lessons in our own careers, and we realized we, as a united front, we would have a stronger voice than we'd been functioning all as kind of as independents. And then we also, our timing was kind of good in that cloud software had reached a little bit of a different level by the time we started. So for example, like my original consulting business that I still like have pieces of still runs on my QuickBooks desktop software and blah blah blah, and I'm dealing with downloading transactions and all that stuff. Like we launched on a cloud accounting package called Zero, which is really good. It's more popular in the UK, but it is in the US too. And and all of our administrative stuff was all built automating various processes, like whether it was like tapping into Zero for like receipts and expense management and stuff like that. But we basically automated a ton of stuff on the back end. And so as a result, we built like a very lean infrastructure. And obviously, that lean startup stuff isn't something we invented by any means, but we definitely capitalized on a lot of those trends. And so as a result, like one of the good things about our business is that we have a pretty controlled core of expenses, and our only major expense, and this is probably no surprise to people listening on that call, is talent. We invest in our people and our contributors. We have a bunch of contributors, and we want to be a great employer for them, and that really matters because reader trust is everything for us, and we need the best people. So that happens, and but aside from that, like everything is basically like cost controlled. And so when we do gain new clients and stuff, it plugs into a nice lean infrastructure where we err on the side of excessive customer service and excessive reader engagement. And we don't have a lot of like waste of money on the operational side, so that's really great. And so, one of the other funny things about us in terms of people and process is that we have a very strange management structure because we have 5 owners. And so we've never had to take a vote on any decisions. We decide everything by consensus. And I think the reason that has worked is that we have just a very, very honest approach. And so, yes, that gets a little bruising sometimes because feelings aren't really necessarily spared when you have those kinds of conversations. But one thing I really like about my group is that there's no resentments carried forward. Like everything is expressed. So I don't have to walk around thinking, I wonder if this partner is kind of, you know, gaining resentment over this issue or feeling upset about, because they're going to tell me,
Right.
like, and that's going to get out in the open and we're going to deal with it. And that has been our modus operandi from the beginning. And as far as management tips are concerned, while we have an unusual management structure, I do think that that type of approach works so much better than the politics and maneuvering and the backstabbing and all the other things that have derailed the organizations I've been involved with in the past.
I'm gonna pull two things out of what you just shared that I want to just highlight for everybody listening. One is, hey, there are ways to, and we live in a marvelous time, right? There are ways to use cloud-based software to really create efficient infrastructure to get the job done, to allow us to be very white glove, client first service, service
Yep.
centric kind of companies. And that's a marvelous thing. So the more you can create the systems and processes that enable you to scale and enable you to create the client journey, the client experience you want to have, uh, the better. And you guys have a unique perspective on that because you deal with large companies, or you understand what large companies are going through to implement these huge software implementations to get some of the value that you guys can get on, you know, quote unquote off the shelf cloud based services for smaller businesses. You can benefit from the promise they're all reaching for with those large implementations pretty
Yep.
easily. So You just make it happen in your business, which is awesome. The other thing I heard you say is, and this is unique, the 5 owners, 5 partners, um, there are probably other 5 partner groups out there, but most of the businesses that I work with might have two people as a partnership, or maybe 3, but it's usually not more than 3. So sometimes 4, sometimes even less, 5. But you guys make that work through, it sounds like an original agreement of some sort, whether explicit or not. There was a culture there formed of, we're going to be completely open and authentic with each other. We're going to be respectful. We're going to disagree, but we're going to do it in ways that we can overcome those any personal feelings around that and get to a consensus on a decision. I think that's pretty unique. So I wish we could dedicate a whole episode, maybe another time, to like, what does that look like when you start disagreeing on matters? How do you get to consensus? Because
Yeah, it's not easy.
usually, yeah, not
Yeah,
easy. Usually, businesses have to use the org structure to figure that
right.
out. Like, one of
And
us has got
or
to be
some
the
kind of
CEO.
voting structure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
voting. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So consensus. That's fascinating to me. Okay, let's shift gears with the time that we have remaining to, and maybe you've already alluded to some of these challenges for your business, but as you think about how to move to where you guys are trying to take this business in the future, what is a thing that you'd like us to discuss that, maybe I can shed some light, or maybe together we can come upon a new way of looking at something.
Yeah, I wanna share 2 things with you, and then you can decide which one you wanna drill into more. One of them I wanna share because it kinda completes the conversation, and I wanna make sure your audience gets this part. Um, One of the really big shifts that I noticed over time, because I had some other friends who were in publishing with me, a couple of them really, really wanted a passive income stream kind of business. And I understand why they wanted that because that's awesome to wake up in your bunny slippers and, check your bank account. One of my role models, I printed out a picture of him in his boxer shorts, like running his empire or whatever. But the point is, like, there used to be this thing around, okay, you put up a bunch of content, a bunch of people find it, they come to your site, they start buying stuff, and you just kind of count the receipts. And unfortunately, that business model is really under a lot of duress. And so while content is still powerful, it needs more from you. And so the model that we've embraced that still holds up well is, yeah, we get some search traffic, but it's starting to change. Some of that is the impact of AI on business models. So for example, if you go to like Google or Bing now, you'll see that one of their big goals is to keep you in their environment. So, they want to answer your question right there, and they don't really want to send readers out to websites as much as they did anymore. So there's some big changes that happen with that, right? And those are challenges. And so one of the ways we're counteracting that I would like your audience to also think about is that content should bleed over into community. So content is kind of a way to start sparking community-based discussions. And ultimately, there's almost no limit to how vibrant a community environment can be in terms of the relationships that you form, sometimes even with people that you compete with sometimes, where that ends up being things like ideally some on the ground events and things like that, combined with savvy use of virtual technology, which is, in my view, still sorely underestimated in its power to actually build community. If you also tie it into on the ground relationship building together throughout the year, it's that continuous model of engagement that is powerful. So that's one thing we're trying to deal with. Like AI is a real thing, and it does threaten things because AI can generate content, thereby making a commodity type of environment. So, that's core to our business model to try to counteract that. So that's one thing. But the other thing that we struggle with, and I think a lot of your listeners probably will struggle with this at various points, is the talent issue. And yeah, okay, you see how you can scale if you had the quality people that you could bring on that would help you to do that. And, you can't offload something onto just anyone, and it depends on your business how that works. And, some businesses are great where it's like, "Oh, I could hire some high school students to do this." And if you can do that, then more power to you, and you've created a really good business. That in the E-Myth, I think that's one of the things he says is like, "Can a high school student do some of your core?" Then that's great. Well, a high school student can't do what we do, unfortunately. So we've had to like kind of figure that out. And one of the things we've done is we've engaged really experienced people, and that can be really cool. But at times I think you find that experience can work against you too, in the sense that sometimes there's a lot of unlearning that has to happen with experienced individuals in this world, where if you're trying to do something different and they've been doing something a more standard way, some of that unlearning can be difficult. And so our best experiences have been finding people that have more, I would say, raw talent and bringing them on, and that's really gratifying because those are the people that really crave opportunities and a lot of times are kind of locked out. So bringing that on is great, but there's also a nurturing process that needs to happen there. So there's a lot more intensity around upskilling and stuff like that. And so, we're grappling with that, and we have, ever since we started. And most companies in my industry will tell me the same thing. So we're not unique, and there's no like magic solution to that, but it is like we could definitely be a somewhat larger organization if there were more people that we found that we thought, "Oh, this is gonna be a great fit." So, that's been a challenge.
Okay. Well, I of the 2, I'll take the talent one. I
Okay,
I'm
cool.
the AI threatening, the models of how content works, online, that I'm gonna be less expert at, but the talent
Yeah, and I
thing.
just mentioned that one just because I wanted to get to that point around community, because I just wanted
Oh,
to leave your audience with that point because I think it's really important, but I'm happy to talk about talent, so let's do it.
and actually, I'm glad you brought it back to community because I actually wanna use that as a potential maybe part of the solution for the talent problem.
Mhm,
I think the more successful companies that I've seen that has the talent situation you described, often they're experts in their thing, right? Like you guys are experts at what you do, and if you can create that community that you talked about, which helps solve the first problem, but also can be a training ground or a vetting ground or a proving ground for potential talent for your team. I've seen that in our elite entrepreneurs community. We have some business owners that sort of latch on to our method or our expertise, and they implement really well, and they get the results. They double and triple in their business, and it's like this thing is working, and we start shining a light on them as examples to everybody else, right? Like, look,
mhm.
here's some stuff. So I don't know how that applies directly to your situation, but if I just play this out a little bit, I imagine a world where some of your active consumers of the content you're distributing start to play a role in the conversation itself, right? They become more active
Yep.
members of the community, and you guys start to handpick the ones that are playing in a way that catches your attention, right? They're it's not that they agree with everything that you're putting out necessarily, but they certainly engage in a way that you appreciate, that you think is worthwhile, and you start. I don't know. Maybe you can start tapping them for a project, and like at first, they don't even have to be employees, right? And say, "Hey, we have this thing in mind. How would you like to contribute in this way?" And I don't know. There's a little bit of a try before you buy luxury, I guess you have in a community space where it's like, hey, we want to try this cool thing. Anybody who's interested, and you kind of watch who rises up and takes that opportunity. But I think you're right, John, that a lot of the businesses that rely on experienced, and we'll just leave it at that, on experienced producers or experienced knowledgeable team members, like that's the old apprenticeship model, right? It's like you gotta
Mm,
be an apprentice for a while, and then you become the journeyman, then you become the craftsman or whatever, right? In the trades, there's kind of a thing that they have. And I think in some of the knowledge areas or content distribution types of businesses, like we should figure out how to build that into our future talent strategy, right? Like how do we grow it ourselves and bring people in and create I'm not huge into hierarchy, but like levels of contribution that
mhm.
progressively grow over time. I don't know. There might be something in there. So I just
I
blabbed a
think
lot.
there
Is
is,
there
yeah.
is there anything that triggers ideas for you in that, John?
Yeah, it's kind of a reminder of areas where I think we could do more and where we have talked about, but probably need to flesh out even more. I think you're right about that in the sense that we have some folks I might consider more like fans who are our most engaged readers and contributors from the outside. And we've thought about things like creating influence councils with people like that. We have experimented a little bit with events, and we have helped with a lot of events, but we haven't put on as many of our own, and that's another area that could logically segue into that. But I think you're kind of right in that we probably could do a lot more to flesh out what the journey is like from someone who's a more casual person who checks our content every once in a while, and that's important for them, but they're busy with their day job versus people that are much more engaged. And then what do we do for them? How can we amplify what they do and also learn from them and engage them further? I wouldn't say that's a current strength of ours, and so probably there's more we can do there. And I wouldn't say that's totally new thinking for us, but I think you've honed in on like areas where we really could use a more well executed plan for sure, no doubt about that.
Yeah, I'll often refer to myself as master of the obvious. There's not always new stuff, right? So, but
Well, I don't know if it's totally obvious though. I think what you did is you honed in on kind of like in a way are an area where we do need to be stronger, and so I think you're spot on there. It's just we need to probably focus on a little bit more.
one other thing that's unique about the five of you as co-founders, partners, is usually if there's a business owner or a couple people, you can go looking for hints in their past as to what made them uniquely qualified to do this thing. In this case, at least you have five data points or five journeys to go explore. And so, are
Right.
there some commonalities? Right? Did you guys have similar interests in school, or love certain classes, or do you have similar degrees, or do you have similar career paths? And maybe by looking back at all five of you, there's some intersections of commonalities that would help you go, if we were to pull somebody right out of their undergrad experience, it would be somebody who that right, based on the analysis of the
Yeah.
five of us. And maybe you're all completely different, and that makes you beautiful as a combination. But maybe there's something that you could find there that would give you an idea of, hey, what increases our chances of picking up a younger person and starting them on a path that leads to where we are, right? I don't know.
So I think you're kind of right about that because one I haven't really thought about like exactly what everyone's profile like the commonality, but you're not wrong in that I think there is some common threads around like it's hard to put an exact word, but like I guess a passion for storytelling and a passion for like truth is a strong word, but a desire to kind of tell like real world narratives around what's really happening and kind of break through some of the like hype around technology and to make a difference in people's lives. And so one of the reasons that is important is that while I think we do offer like a good career opportunity on a certain level, like I'm also poignantly aware that there's a lot more lucrative ways you can make money in our industry than working for Diginomica. Like, because we're a publication, we're not like we don't have the same multiples that SaaS software companies do, right? And
Right.
so it's just different. And so like the last person we recruited to the core team like early on, one of the things I liked about him is like such a hardcore journalist, and we're like, yeah, we're never going to get the call like, oh, I took a big VP of marketing job, for four times what you can pay me or whatever. Now, granted, some of this we counteract with equity in the company and stuff like that, but I'm of the mind that you have to be a little conscientious about equity as a substitute for salary because I think you can oversell equity a little bit because liquidity events are great when they happen, but you also I don't want to feel like, oh, we underpaid someone for 10 years based on the promise of a future cash out. So, but yeah, I think you kind of nailed it. That there's something that drives people that want to be a part of this, and if they do have those drives, then I think there is something good about what we do because we're a lot more stable than a lot of tech media environments where another one goes belly up every day. I just saw another, wave of firings from a big tech media firm hit LinkedIn. And so we're not going to have that. So, we have a different model. At least I hope to hell we never have that, but we don't look like we're going to. So we don't have that venture capital pressure at our backs because we're bootstrapped. So it's totally different. So anyway, but I think you nailed it down there. So that's good. That'll give me something to think about.
Yeah, think about it. I think anytime something's working, it's not like it just happened overnight, right? It takes time, it takes effort. You guys have a lot of experience, but I like how you started to deconstruct even some of the emotional drivers, like what fuels us. And where we start with any business that we work with is purpose and values. And I think you started to
Yep.
use words that go back to those core elements, even if
Yep.
it doesn't map back to like job experience. You can always find out what do we care about and how do we operate with the world, right? Or how do we show up in the world? And that those two core elements of purpose and values combine to make the shared identity of the team. And for sure, you should be mapping on those things when you hire somebody in. But I'm hoping you can also find some experiential commonalities or interest or background types of things that might indicate if somebody could be a good fit. So, anyway, it was fun to talk about. John, if people want to learn more, connect with you online, or learn more about Diginomica, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, they can find me at diginomica.com. I'm writing there frequently, and I always welcome LinkedIn, messages as well. And I'm still on Twitter/X, whatever the heck you want to call that today, too. So take your pick amongst those three. Whatever you like better is fine. And, I'm happy to engage further. I, like to try to help people along their path because I had a lot of people who did that for me back in the day. So if I can do anything for you, let me know.
Great. John, you've been an awesome guest. Thank you. So, yeah, go check out diginomica.com if you want to learn more about John and his team and what they're doing out there. And then as for elite entrepreneurs, what we're doing, please listen, share, like, review, comment, do all those things to help these episodes get in front of as many seven-figure business owners as possible. We're trying to lift the burden and help people achieve their growth objectives. Sorry. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on another episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast.